What is up, folks? This voice you hear may be unfamiliar, but it is I, Dylan Most Dirty, back from the dead. No, I actually moved teams recently, but back to help out my friends on the League podcast by co-hosting one of our installments that's going to be about our latest story efforts. As you may recall, I am a story nerd, so for some reason I guess they thought I'd be suitable for this. All right, so as I was saying, we're back to check in with the story folks, and for that purpose, we have as co-host Jake Pierce, who is a publishing bro like myself, specifically on Foundations, and he has one of the best summoner names at Riot Games. Jake, why don't you share that with us?
My summoner name is Love Commander.
Man, awesome. That deserves its own podcast someday.
I'm sorry, maybe I should say it. Love Commander.
There you go. Thank you. And of course, the experts on the matter, we have Graham McNeil, aka Dino Paws, as you may recall, one of the writers here at Riot. Graham, say hi.
Hello. How you doing, guys?
Hey, and Rayla Heidi. Did I get it right?
You got it right. Yay.
Awesome. Gelbug, also one of the writers involved in this project as well. So, folks, obviously what we're here to talk about today is the return to the Shadow Isles. So I think that would be my first question, and maybe you all can shed some insight there. Why are we back at the Shadow Isles, actually? Some players out there might be asking, hey, didn't we already do Shadow Isles? Don't everybody all speak at once.
Well, I'm just waiting to see who might have leapt in first there with a more incisive answer than I'm likely to give. Well, Shadow Isles, when we first visited there, some of the champions, we didn't have the bandwidth to get to all of them in the time that we wanted to release it. So some of them fell by the wayside. We decided, right, well, this is our great time to go back there, reinvigorate the Shadow Isles, and what with the Yorick rework coming out at the same time, it felt like, how can we best support this? Well, let's go back, do all the champions that we missed first time, add some more promotional material that we thought really supported Yorick and the idea of the Shadow Isles. It brought more interest and ideas of where it came from and delve deeper into some of the lore that was only touched on in some of the earlier bios.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yorick is definitely pretty exciting, as we've seen from the player response. And I guess now that I think of it, the Shadow Isles didn't quite in their first go around get fleshed out to the fullest extent, like some of the other more recent ones, say like Shurima, have in terms of covering all of the champions. So the idea here is, we were kind of close to it, and why not finish it off?
Absolutely. And also we wanted to cover some of the other aspects of the Shadow Isles to show that not everybody on the Shadow Isles is evil. There are some good things left there still.
And a flower.
And a flower, yes.
But we'll get to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the best sort of Pandora's box scenario, the last thing in it is the tiny little grain of hope that maybe something could be done.
Of course.
That's right.
It definitely does feel more fleshed out. Now, I've always thought of the Shadow Isles as something projecting outwards and screwing up the rest of the world, but we got a little bit of insight into it screwing up itself as well, in fact. Some pretty desolate stuff from what we were seeing.
Yeah, I think we want to show that the Shadow Isles is not just the harrowing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a lot that's interesting about it that we can talk about.
Gotcha.
And it's also not a stasis place. Things are changing on the Shadow Isles. The ghosts aren't just hanging out and doing nothing.
So on that note, what is new in the Shadow Isles? What's kind of the cutting edge of what we're exploring with all this? Obviously, we're just hitting the champions we missed, but what were the things we were really trying to get at?
Well, some of that comes from Yorick himself. Like, again, as Rayla said, the idea behind a lot of the aims we're wanting to hit on this is the idea of Paradise Lost, that the Shadow Isles was once a beautiful, glorious place that had such lofty ideals and high ambitions to be something incredible in Runeterra, but it fell. Partly through their own arrogance, partly through the actions of an outsider who came there and corrupted the place. And bringing some aspects to the story, so the Shadows wasn't just a place of evil, there was a place of pathos there, that you had a more emotional involvement in what had happened and how it had come to be that way. So it was giving, like Israel says, it's not a place of stasis, it's a place where bad things happened, but things can change on there. It's not just, well, that's where the dead things are, that's where the spirits live. There's things, plans within plans and motion happening on that island that will have ramifications, hopefully, later down the line.
Sure, that's definitely been one of my favorite things about the regions we're hitting in sequence, and that really does kind of seem our approach at this point, is hitting them in sequence, but specifically that we learn about the past. A lot of the regions that are a bit lighter on story at this point in our story development, we have an idea of them now, maybe, but not what they once were, or even as much where they're going. And it's so fun to see other regions get their own histories fleshed out, kind of like what we've seen with Shurima. And then in this case, it's good fodder for making me want to hear more about what was going on back in the day. Who was this ruined king? What were the Blessed Isles like? All that kind of stuff. I know in this case it's really fun because we're getting completely different perspectives. We've got everything from a tree to a weird, crazy ghost-seeing monk to some really, really messed up evil dudes.
Yes.
Anyway, which is, and all this talk of, it's not just evil, it's not just dark. I mean, there is plenty of evil and dark there. Let's not forget that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, Mordekaiser he has his own ideas for what he wants the Shadow Elves to be and what he wants to achieve there, and they're not conducive to the good of all beings on Runeterra, shall we say.
Sure. So one thing I'm really curious about is that, and this is me reaching into the Wayback Machine. I believe the Ruined King, the idea of that figure, has been around in League lore for a long time, going quite back. Am I correct on that note?
Yeah, that's right. It's been around for a while.
So it seems like it's kind of been one of those things that we decided to keep in that way as we were looking to move forward and modernize and really flesh things out to the extent that we're working on these days, and that have really started to kind of use it as the focal point for what we're going for. What was it about that? Did the idea just ring as a really cool one that seemed like it had the potential for that, or is it can I get some insight into that decision?
Yeah, the Ruined King is as a potentially, as it was in the day, a throwaway line, plays exactly to something that we've talked about in the podcast before, where always leave hooks in your story, never be too tidy with the backstory, leave threads unpulled that you can come back to at a later time when you may not, at the time of writing, you might not know what this thing is, but that's fine, you can leave it. When good ideas, better ideas occur to you later on in the writing of something else, when another character pops up, another scenario develops, and you can think, actually, that would make a lot of sense if that was this guy or this person or whatever. And having just little narrative tokens strewn around your backstory is always just good to have. And as a name in itself, the Ruined King, it's a very evocative title. You think, well, what does that mean? Did he do the ruining? Was he ruined? It offers up all sorts of possibilities. And, we've got the Blade of the Ruined King as an item. So it's one of these things that it's begging to be told. It's when you've got that baited a hook, why not use it? Sure, that makes a ton of sense. So changing tack a little bit, and Jake, maybe this is something you can talk a little bit about. I'm sure some players are out there going, "Hey, this Shadow Isle stuff, it's a month early. Why are we not around Halloween?" And I think I have some insight into that, which is that based off what you're talking about, we want to emphasize that the Shadow Isles is much more than the idea of the harrowing, and in fact that the harrowing isn't even some once a year Halloween-esque type thing. It's just really the constant of this place, right? So was that deliberate in this case?
Yeah, so like I was saying before, we wanted to make sure that this isn't just a place that the harrowing comes out of. There's a lot of interesting stories here. There's a lot of interesting characters. And the harrowing doesn't even really have a timetable, right? Like, it's not necessarily tied to Halloween. It happened to have fallen around that time in past years.
Believe it or not all ghosts have a calendar.
Yeah, exactly.
What is Runeterra's calendar? God, it's all these
There's a
details
foundation sheet waiting to happen.
And you may remember Shadow and Fortune was the last story we told around the Shadow Isles. It's a larger one, and that was involved with the harrowing, but there's more that we want to say about it.
Sure. Yeah. And you don't want to be bound, I guess, is the idea.
And when something as terrifying as the harrowing becomes a regular event, it loses its terror factor. Sure. If you can just say, right, harrowing's coming in about 11, best batten down the hatches. Yeah. Or tell you what, around this time of year, I holiday in Demacia and then wait for it to pass, then come back again.
Sure. Yeah.
It loses all sense of fear. What we want to engender people's thoughts about the harrowing in Bilgewater and beyond is that this could happen at any moment. Every moment, every day, every morning you wake up and open the doors and it's the sun shining. Whew, another day without the harrowing.
There's no black mist about to eat me.
Exactly. So every day should be frightening.
Yeah, and it comes down to the presentation too. Obviously figuring out the ideal ways to, and this is something I really want to talk about with this, given the poem. Figuring out how to present these stories to players is a really big challenge, because there's the constant battle between depth and accessibility, and certain players like to consume things this way, and then also just what do they expect out of how we're doing it. And I can imagine that it's probably pretty difficult to set the tone right for a place like the Shadow Isles if it's accompanied by a kitty cat Katarina sale. It's not really the terrifying tone that we're going for. So I get that. I get that separating in this case can really get the mood going, right? I guess. Jake, what has that been like? Actually, I know that you are a more recent member of this whole story effort. What's it been like grappling with that task of having to convey so much story, all of those little details? Oh man, what is the calendar of Runeterra and questions like that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think Graham and Rayla can definitely speak a lot about this, but it's really focusing on what interesting stories are we seeing pop up and what kind of things are dragging us in. With York coming along, that gave us an opportunity to really explore the Shadow Isles a lot more, and really gives us kind of a timetable to say, hey, if we're going to talk about him, why don't we talk about all these others at the same time? And it gives us a better focus, I think.
Definitely.
So in this case, we did, that first thing that players are going to notice is the epic poem, of course. That's I don't want to call it a departure for us, because we've definitely made a habit, it seems like, of telling stories through a variety of mediums. I mean, we had a puppet movie show thing one time for the Shadow.
Master,
yeah, exactly. That was amazing.
Yeah.
And super mind blowing, and really like. The norm is actually that our story efforts look different every time.
Yeah, different is the norm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that just with this that you wanted to push the envelope? Did an epic poem particularly suggest itself in this case? Shoot, who wrote it?
Me.
Okay,
Graham.
I did.
All
My first poem.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm very proud of it. Yeah, partly partly the idea for that came out of something that we had planned for the original hit on the Shadow Isles, because we'd written a kind of definitive in our heads. This is the Shadow Isles. This is how it all happened. This is what shook out and how things came to be the way they are. But obviously that was a little too literal. It was never something we intended to use other than for ourselves, so that we knew exactly what was happening. Because that's not an interesting way to present a story to players. Just a list of facts. Here's how it happened. So we came up with the idea of doing this kind of epic poem style thing, because it was a way to convey that story in hopefully an interesting manner. Partly it came out of my love for an Iron Maiden song called "The Rime of the Ancient Mariner," which is an epic 15-minute track that is a metal rendition of Samuel Taylor Coleridge's poem "The Rime of the Ancient Mariner."
Yep.
And
Somewhere out there, a player just lost his mind. He's
hopefully,
just like
hopefully,
biggest iron wearing an Iron
as long
Maiden
as
shirt.
as long as we get one of them, we are succeeding. And I've always loved that. The tale itself, the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, is a great story, and it's a morality play, a cautionary tale, a ghost story, a horror story. And I wanted to try and recreate an element of that to bring some of those sensibilities to this story, and it would allow us to tell the story of the Shadow Isles wrapped in another story. There's one main narrative, and within that story, another story is told by the characters. So it was a way of conveying the information that we wanted them to know about the Shadow Isles, to give them that knowledge of how it came to be, without just saying, right, well, he went here and did that, did this, done, we're finished. It was just an evocative way of telling it, and the added component to that was that we decided this would possibly make a really good audio. Mm-hmm. So let's see if there's some way we can bring this to the level where we can get it to the players that will hopefully give them the creeps when they listen to it.
Yeah, you mentioned it being so evocative is a really good point. And going back to the champion bio examples, it's really easy, I imagine, to just and I know I've done this in consuming fantasy, where you just are essentially getting slapped in the face with how horrible something is. Oh, it's terrible, and so many intense adjectives are being used. But the fun thing about what we do that we're able to do in this case is it seems like I'm getting it from the perspective of a living tree, how horrible this is. I'm getting it from the perspective of the last living person. I'm getting it from the perspective of the evil guy. And then in this case, I almost got a sense of just kind of classical horror coming out of this poem, which was the really cool thing. So just it feels a lot more fleshed out in that way, I guess.
I also like the cultural aspect of the poem, the sense that it's
Sure.
a story within a story, and it kind of highlights the fact that people see the Shadow Isles in different ways, and every place in Runeterra has their own idea of what horrors lie waiting on the Shadow Isles for them.
Very much so.
I think like every story, you have to keep in mind, narrators can't necessarily be trusted.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
they're
Right,
telling
and-
it from their point of view.
Yes, and the narrator of this particular story is the same narrator from the Harrowing video. It's the same character, the puppet master. It's the same actor, the same character telling this tale. So, again, knowing who's telling you this tale, you have to wonder a little bit how much of this is truthful, how much is exaggeration, embellishment, how much is intended to just scare the pants off whoever's listening to it, how much is intended as a warning to them. Because I love the idea that this character was one that maybe sometimes he is the guy who draws you into your death without a second thought. Other times he's the guy who offers you the choice. Here's the options. Here's the way you could behave. The temptation is before you. Damn yourself or redeem yourself. Other times he is actively trying to save your soul, but you never know quite which one you're dealing with at any particular moment. So be wary of this fellow.
Scrape the bench of sunless moss and hearken to this tale of loss. A princess lies below the soil, a king's pride and joy, a beauty divine. Now food for worms, her flesh to dine. Skin once fair, now left to spoil. A princeling came, a suitor fair, to press his cause, to wed the heir. The marriage feast like none before was blighted by a deed most foul. A poisoned cup the king did howl. To find a cure, the princeling swore. His ship set sail, crossed oceans deep, with knights all pledged to end death's sleep. Through tempests fierce and unknown miles, drawn by wind from a land undying, the very storm its name seemed sighing. A place men named the Shadow Isles.
All right, that's not foreboding at all. For those of you out there who haven't yet read the, it is out, right? Am I losing my mind?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the site with the Harrowing video, Callista's video, and Shadow and Fortune, and all the champ bios as well from the previous time we hit.
Perfect. Yeah, that's so definitely give that a read/listen if you haven't already. And that's one of the super cool things about it. It's weird. There's a lot. There are some players who are gonna see that stuff and be like, oh, I already saw some of these things. Although there are obviously a ton of new content for them as well. But there's also players, because there are new players all the time. There's ones who might have missed that back in the day, who are gonna get to see some of that stuff for the first time. So it's exciting to see so much of it compiled together. We'll touch on that a little bit more later, just our techniques for all of this and where we're going. But right now, I'd actually love to just dive into some of the new things we've learned about some of these champions. So let's talk Maokai, because that one just that gave me the feels. I cannot remember for the life of me what Maokai's old thing used to be. I know it used to be tied to the Twisted Tree line of all things, which obviously was a bit restrictive given the way things are these days. Was he always just at home on the Shadow Isles? Was that just the place he had to be and it just worked for him? Or, what was the beginning of how Maokai got to where he is?
He's been on the Shadow Isles for a while. I think there was an update about a year and a half ago
okay,
where
gotcha.
we moved him from Twisted Tree Line to the Shadow Isles.
Okay.
It made sense for him because he's kind of this haunted tree figure. He's always been a really powerful tree spirit, even from his inception in the Shadow Isles. But what we wanted to do with this update was highlight his backstory, show why the Shadow Isles is such an important place to him before it even becomes the Shadow Isles, and kind of show that journey and show the tragedy of all of that falling apart.
Yeah, no kidding. One thing I was curious about is he the kind of nature spirit of the Shadow Isles, or is it more like a situation?
There are other nature spirits there too, but he's definitely the oldest one.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
What I found interesting was that, as that flower bloomed there, it seemed like the whites and the spirits there, they kind of honed in on that and that source of life. Is that something that Maokai is kind of able to hide and slip under? Because he, of course, has lived there for very long since the cataclysmic event. So is he kind of able to avoid their detection?
He's kind of a special case, we'll call him. He exists only because the waters of life live within him. So before the ruination happened, he was able to essentially suck in all the waters that he could. And that's what kept him alive during all of this crazy ruination stuff. So he still has a little bit of himself alive, but his outer bark has been twisted and corrupted and was not totally saved. So his identity has transformed absolutely from his original shape.
It's sad. I mean, and that whole ravening nature of how the Shadow Isles are these days, that's something I consistently got from all these different stories reading through here. That it's freaky, man. And you know, the best thing about the new Maokai story is it's got that same thing that so many other ones have done, like some of the Mount Targon ones. I remember this especially, where it makes me want to go play them.
Yeah.
I want to play them and be like, I am
Absolutely.
the defender.
Yeah.
I'm such a freaking nerd. I'm sorry.
And you're in good company.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. So that was obviously one of the really cool ones, but not alone. Elise is an interesting one because, you know, she gets made. Let's be honest, we were making a spider lady when we made her. It's cool. It's a cool champion to have and everything. And so you've got the challenge of fitting that into the story in a cohesive way. And the way we did it is pretty interesting. You know, we've had some interesting times with those like cross-faction, cross-region champions in the past. So it's intriguing to see that we went with that in this case. I suppose it's required just because the Shadow Isles are so crazy messed up that it's kind of hard to justify anybody living there. But can we get some insight into how you incorporated Elise into this situation?
Well, Elise was one that I looked at and thought that she was one that could play to that kind of vampiric aspect of the monstrous aspect of a vampire, not the white cravat, silk tie wearing Dracula type, but a more animalistic, monstrous vampire that sucked life out of people. And the idea of having this crazy shut-in stuck in Noxus, who this mad woman at the end of the street kind of idea that everybody thinks is there anybody living in that street? No, there's nobody living there, but don't go down there because people who go down that street don't ever come back again. There's something living up in the tower there. And that felt like a really interesting hook for stories to take place in Noxus, but also gave us a way of tying in elements of things like the Black Rose, why she went to the Shadow Isles, what she does there. And it's just a cool archetype to have that sort of seductive siren then to be revealed as this horrific monstrosity. You know, it's like in the Shining when Jack Nicholson pulls back the shower curtain and she's this, the crazy old lady's there, or finding this thing that has brought you in and suddenly, my God, it's a monster. And that moment of terror that you have, and certainly in the color text, you know, we played that to the hilt, where these people are walking willingly, you know, lambs to the slaughter into this cave, thinking they're going to this wonderful future, or that this woman loves me, she's brought me to this amazing place. And then that's suddenly reversed when you realize just how awful she actually is, how terrifying a fate she's brought you to.
Spoiler, it goes badly for them.
Does not end well.
I think my favorite part of her story, though, was the whole really intense stuff with her husband, and then and right at the end there was the, you know, of course, this being Noxus, everybody was happy with what she did.
Again, any chance we get within the bios to highlight an aspect of a culture or a faction, every bio should tell first and foremost is about that champion. It highlights what's cool about them, why you want to play them, the emotional beats that got them to where they are now. But it can also, and should also, at every opportunity, allow us to build the world, allow us to add texture to the world. So, yeah, we learn all about Elise in this, we learn all about Maokai in his bio, but we also learn something of where they come from, the worlds and the places and the people that shape them, because that helps build that connective tissue between places, people, and the world that makes it feel more real.
Gotcha. So I definitely have some red shirt guy questions on the topic of Elise. Specifically, I'm curious about the crazy intense spider god figure she encounters. First of all, are we dealing with something that just kind of happened by happenstance, or was this a case of a kind of being chosen essentially, and the figure that enacted this transformation, making this whole thing happen.
There were certainly elements that I wanted to seed into that story.
Gotcha.
That perhaps the cult leader of the Black Rose had something to do with it, that maybe she had seen something in Elise that she could then use. Also that perhaps this was something, foreordained and what have you, but leaving it open as to which it was, or maybe just Elise was the right person at the right time, or the wrong person at the wrong time.
Yeah.
My personal take on it is that she was groomed for that role by the pale woman.
Yeah, that was definitely some of the sense I got. Very interesting. Definitely want to know more about that. And then the other one was this spider god figure, how it ties into the larger insanity that is the Shadow Isles. I get the sense that it's not necessarily a living thing, which is why it doesn't have anything to worry about. But are you able to shed any light on that and how it ties into the larger, like I said, insanity?
Well, the spider god thing is, I don't see it as being, as you say, a living creature on the Shadow Isles, and even if it was, it has power enough that any of the spirits who dared come near it, it could probably destroy. So the spirits now probably wisely give it a wide berth.
Don't mess with the giant spider god.
Don't mess with the giant 50-foot tall spider.
All right.
Is just good advice for anyone, frankly. But the spider god isn't necessarily, it's not necessarily a creature that squats in the cave. That maybe that's just an aspect of it where it's squeezing through into this world, that's possibly the place where it's most obviously visible or has presence. There could be others, but this is certainly it's a place where it has managed to find a place to ooze its bulk into the world most prominently.
Now, Elise also brings back some artifacts from the Shadow Isles.
Oh, yeah.
That interesting dagger that had some sort of power. Is that something where the Blessed Isles was kind of known for the kind of thing where they would make these kind of weapons, or is that an effect of the Shadow Isles and the cataclysmic event?
So the people on the Blessed Isles before the ruination happened were kind of academics, but they were also collectors. So anytime they found an interesting or powerful object, they would like to take it back to their vast library of magical, crazy things. So I imagine the dagger is probably one of those things that they collected that is now just sitting there with no one using it.
Interesting.
Yes, yeah. When the ruination happened, all the vaults are broken open, the buildings toppled, and all the scholars archived, everything from the galleries, the museums, the twisted treasure vaults were broken open, and that's one of the reasons why treasure hunters or foolhardy adventurers might think to set sail for the Shadow Isles, for the riches and the magical things said to be scattered out the ruins.
Talk about the Darwin Awards, man. You're not going to make that mistake twice.
High risk, high reward.
What is the Runeterra version of that?
Yeah.
Does that make at least the only, I'm putting up air quotes here for people who can't see, human to have ever made it to the Shadow Isles and back out? That we know of, at least?
That potentially that we know of. That we know
That
of.
we
I mean,
know of.
Yeah.
and she
Yeah.
had help in
Yeah,
the
that's
sense
true.
of she was given, a free pass
Yeah.
to get through.
Certainly not unscathed.
No,
Yeah.
definitely not.
She's one of the few that has a symbiotic relationship with something on the Shadow Isles, though. I would say that.
Interesting.
Yeah, that one is definitely interesting.
I guess
so,
Yorick has that too.
So getting to the one that I'm sure excited some players out there. Mordekaiser's been an interesting champion for a long time. Certainly seen his share of gameplay upheaval. What exactly he is, the Master of Metal, and it's kind of drifted around a ton. Yeah, yep. Graham throwing the metal sign. Here you go. Rack. It's really interesting to see that. I feel like we recaptured a really good badass niche for him. And it was the thing that really got me is the scope of his story. We really have, I know, been generally trying to flesh out that Runeterra is an old place. Obviously, there's a lot of history here, a lot of it very murky. There was a definite point in his story where I was like, okay, now we're going to get to the present day. And it was like, no, actually, that's still back in the day. That's just a later ancient epic as well.
Yeah.
So what inspires you to go with such a crazy old tale with this guy?
Well, Mordekaiser has the potential to be like the Runeterran bad guy. He's the potentially the master. Well, he was for a long time master of the known world.
Yeah, that was a key thing. He was on Valorant back in the day when he was, and he looked something more like, human scion, barbarian, giant axe, or giant mace, I imagine.
Yeah, giant mace man.
Yeah.
And now he's got barbarians squatting in his old house.
Yeah. Plus his mace has a name now.
Yes, it does.
Right.
I think that was new, right? Nightfall? Did that already exist?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure if it was new. We'd have to ask Anton Oz about that one.
Somebody out there screaming the answer into their headphones. I know.
Yeah, but yeah, having that scale, it was that kind of the Sauron-esque vibe to him.
Yeah, definitely got that vibe.
He's been around for longer than anyone else.
Very hard to kill, guy.
Laughing
Very
in the
hard to
face
kill.
of being about to be killed.
Every time you think you've got him, he's got his backup plan ready for the next incarnation. And the thing that's interesting to me about Mordekaiser is that despite all this huge longevity and his span of millennia and so on, Mordekaiser probably doesn't want to be undead. His ambition was to rule the world back in the day. He wanted to rule it as human, as an immortal human, but at the moment he's not that. He's immortal, but he's not human anymore.
Yeah.
So there's a real push and pull within his psyche of the madness of having existed for so long and being dead and back alive, not, so to speak, and the fact that he hasn't got what he wanted.
Sure.
And he's trapped now on this godforsaken island with nothing but the dead for companions.
I like that that's his one biggest weakness, too, is that he really just wants to be human. And if he ever succeeded in becoming human again, there would be probably a moment before he became an immortal human where he would be killable.
Yeah, because if at the moment he's immortal and more or less invulnerable. The minute if he was ever to become mortal again, might there be a moment when he could be vulnerable?
Well, I don't feel sorry for him.
No.
Certainly not. But that's definitely interesting. So there was a pretty clear call out at the end of his story. I remember towards Noxus, that he specifically got his eye on them. Obviously he wants to take over everything. The ambition knows no bounds. What is it about Noxus that he's so interested in?
Well, referring back to the
immortal
smelly barbarian
bastion.
squatting in his house.
Yeah.
Okay.
The immortal bastion, the capital, the fortress at the heart of the sprawling Noxian capital of Noxus, is his old fortress.
Okay, all right.
And
should have put that one together.
They kicked him out of that. The proto-Noxians and their alliance of tribes defeated Mordekaiser and threw him out.
Gotcha.
He was the original Noxian.
He was the original.
I believe we call that a shit list. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and
right.
they're
At
top.
number one.
They're top. So yeah, he wants Valoran, the world, because ambition. But yeah, the Noxians were basically the first to beat him.
Okay, that's awesome. I'm excited to see that. And I think some of that comes. One of the cool things about that as when you talk about the wider fleshing out of the universe is, I know we've tried very hard to get away from Demacia good, Noxian bad,
Yes.
or Noxus bad.
So.
And one of the obvious ways to one of the many ways to do that is in this case, obviously, if you've got two bad guys fighting, then that makes it a little more complicated.
Indeed. And then the enemy of my enemy becomes my friend.
Exactly. I'm sure.
Could we see a moment where Darius and Garen are fighting in the battle lines against Mordekaiser?
I think everybody wants to see that. Just
Yeah.
like I'm imagining a cinematic of some time, and they're just wailing on each other, and then all of a sudden Mordekaiser shows up, and they just look at each other and like bro fist and charge. cut scene. Yes, I accept.
Ship it.
I accept
Ship it.
director jobs. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah.
And I to keep on at that point, I love the idea. Speaking to the idea of Noxians are not the bad guys all the time. They can be, depending what end of the sword you're at. But I love the idea of that there can be and should be heroes of legend who are from Noxus. They were the first ones to cast down the great warlord, to defeat the evil necromancer. Oh, that was surely the shining heroes of heroicness. No, it was the Noxian guys. They did it. Oh, so they're not always bad.
Sure.
No.
I mean, shoot, it probably even explains a little bit why they tend to be rather nasty sorts. It sounds like putting down Mordekaiser took some serious work and a lot of killing and re-killing, and so that probably makes the people pretty embittered and tough.
Yes, and when you're building an empire in the ashes of a former warlord that has been riven by war and battle, you're not inheriting a land rich in fertile ground, rich in resources. Conquest is really the only way forward for you.
Okay. All right. Fleshing things out. Okay, so of course last we have York, who's totally gotten his own other treatment, as part of his champion update. We've done another podcast for him as well, specifically. But obviously is kind of a central, part of this story. I believe is the only living guy on the Shadow Isles, right? Like that. Yes, kind of.
Unless you count Maokai.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
sure.
Kind
He's
of
not
alive.
a guy so
Okay.
much as
Yeah.
a tree spirit.
Kind of alive.
Yes, it's indetermined.
Yeah,
Yes.
his task certainly seems an intense one. Thousands of years on the Shadow Isles or something like that is the impression I'm getting. Doesn't even really know what's going on, and kind of keeps sending out dead scouts that don't come back.
His mind has kind of slipped its moorings a little bit.
It seems rough, but definitely a figure for kind of good. It seems.
He has to use the power of evil in order to do good.
So
Which
I know
always ends well.
Always ends well.
Always-
Happy ending. Shadow Isles.
Maokai and York as kind of the two not totally evil people on the island. Is there ever a world where they meet up and perhaps
That's my
share some
dream.
goals?
I would love to see a buddy cop movie where Yorick and Maokai meet up to destroy the Shadow Isles once and for all. But I'm not sure if they will. They have very different ideas about how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that Maokai would approve of all of Yorick's little ghosty friends.
I mean, we've at the same time we saw with the Shreem effort that really cool story. I can't remember what it was called. The short story,
Bloodline.
yeah, the one where Nasus gets beat near to death. That one, you guys should go read that if you haven't, by the way, out there.
Yes, it's awesome.
I hear the author is just this real
total
unsavory-
hack.
Terrible guy.
No, but we saw with that, you have the idea of, okay, these champions are crazy different. They're from all over the world. How do they come together and everything? And that was a story where I believed it, and it seemed plausible. It seemed workable that these characters coming from totally different backgrounds and motivations would come together. So I can definitely still see one day York and Maokai again doing the bro fist thing, like I talked about with
Right.
Darius and
They'd have to get over their differences
yeah.
first.
I'm sure.
That's Act 2.
I'm sure Maokai just swings a little wildly when he sees anything.
Yes.
And Yorick is, as we talked about, just a little loco, so he might have some issues even understanding what's going on.
That's right.
Anyway, let's not talk about Tim too much. That's obviously the Champ Up team's work. He's got a lot of his own coverage. So I mean, at that point, it's that usual question that I ask of you folks when we do these, which is, obviously you can't talk about what's coming next or anything specifically, but just where we are these days in terms of checking in. Obviously, the task is really monumental in terms of just getting League's story up to date before we can move forward. But that is kind of the thing that does seem to be happening is over time, like we're really knocking out some factions, feel really up to date on Shurima, Shadow Isles at this point, Bilgewater to the same extent.
Targon.
Targon. I'm completely so four of those seem really fleshed out to the standard. Is that kind of the plan at this point to kind of knock them all out, get them established essentially? Is that kind of what we're going to be doing over the coming months and years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting to see how the characters work together.
Mm-hmm.
And when you tackle factions more all together at once, it gives you the opportunity to tell stories with each other instead of just one-offs.
Sure.
Yeah, and to talk to your earlier point as well as that, I mean, players love seeing champions interacting in stories, and part of the mission of Foundations is to keep bringing our world to life, is to develop its cultures, its factions, its people, because that is what will bring any setting to life, is the characters that inhabit it, from the majestic kingly level champions all the way down to characters who are not champions, who are the man on the street, so to speak, because that's often where you learn the most of a setting, because the epic level champions don't interact with the world the way the majority of the people do. So telling stories that have champions in them is awesome, but it's also great to see them interacting with the people who are not champions, because that's often where the real grit and reality of a world can be fleshed out. So yeah, I think we'll be seeing a lot more of that kind of storytelling effort.
Super excited for that. I know that was one of my favorite parts of Bloodline is, oh man, there's regular people who live here.
Or
and
regular flowers in Maokai's case.
and regular ghosts
R.I.P.
in York's
Too
case.
soon.
So definitely excited to see just what is the life of the average Rune Terran through some of the other stories we're going to be telling.
Nasty, short, and brutal.
Yes.
Yeah. So totally not promises. Just curious. What are your dream parts of the world to talk about? What are the ones you're most excited to get into in the future?
Well, while we're on the topic of the Shadow Isles, I'm curious to see how things are changing there. As we've seen in Maokai's bio, something has grown here that has not grown in a very, very long time.
So you haven't had enough yet of the Shadow Isles.
Clearly.
She's a very dark person.
She sounds sweet, but she's seriously messed up is what we're getting.
I like to write a lot of monster characters.
So it's the perfect place for you. Okay.
Exactly.
Got you. What about you, Graham?
I've always had a hankering to see what's going on in Piltover and Zaun.
Sure.
Because I think there's a lot of interesting things that could be happening there, and text tech, chem tech, and the sheer volume of characters that we've got there that could easily cross paths because they all live in the one city on top of the other. I think that's a setting ripe for storytelling.
That is a ton of characters indeed, and it's kind of the fun thing is League of Legends threw out originally a ton of different ideas through all of the characters, and perhaps nowhere more than with Piltover and Zaun. You got things like Blitzcrank, a giant robot, and then Corky. I don't know exactly what his deal is, but he's got a plane somehow. So there are going to be some interesting challenges to negotiate, like we've had with all the other regions. But I know I've been continually surprised at your folks' ability to kind of modernize those things and bring them up to date and smooth things over where we need, and then bringing out some of the best new traits. So
because that faction, those two factions rather, are such outliers in terms of the general scope of what a fantasy world as we have set up in a lot of places so far is. So I think the challenge and the fun of that is going to be reconciling how this space could work in a world like Valorant.
Yeah, they definitely do touch on some of the more unique things that I've always felt are part of League lore.
Very much so. Yeah.
Well, now you've got me excited for this dream one day. Thanks, Graham.
No problem.
Gosh,
that's what I'm here for.
Okay. All right. I think we're about done for now. So want to say I appreciate all you coming out to talk with us about this. I know you're sitting there hunched over your desk, feverishly writing by candlelight, I'm sure.
Chained by the ankles to chairs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why did we let them out?
You got to get back to
Good
work.
behavior. Good behavior.
More bios to write. Mush. But no, seriously, I know I appreciate it a lot. I'm sure the players out there do. So thanks for taking the time. And
thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Absolutely. So to all you players out there, thanks for tuning in for this installment, and can't wait to come back for another guest star thing at some point on all these. Hopefully for some more story chats. Until then, take care.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.